Okay. Courtney, hello. Hi. How is it going? Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. Today we're doing a crispy kimchi fried rice that I like to do with a little bit of bacon. It's one of the very, very popular fried rices. It's the one that people order in burritos most often when we do at our pop-up. The pop-up that we do here in the Bay Area, by the way, it's at the Hayward Farmers Market every second and fourth Saturday, and then we're actually doing our first physical pop-up at Degrees Play-Doh this coming Sunday on Halloween. Anyway, more about that later. It's one that's most popular that folks like to do in fried rice burrito, which we do in our pop-up. So this particular one, if you've been following along in the series, was one of the recipes that came out. I think it was one of the maybe the first 10 recipes that came out over on the YouTube channel. When that came out, it looked a lot different at that time because I used to do it in a cast iron pan, and then I also used to finish it with a fried egg on top. Since we started doing the pop-up, it has started looking quite a bit different, mostly because of the logistics behind how you can reproduce a lot of these recipes for public consumption, and just generally trying to scale and make 150 of these things at one time. So that particular recipe has changed quite a bit, so I thought I'd redo that recipe and kind of take a look at how we do it in the pop-up and sort of dive into a little bit more detail on what that all will look like when you order from our pop-up. So we're going to run through that today. A couple of big differences. We're going to do the whole thing, first of all, is going to happen in a wok this time. When we did the original recipe that came out, we did the whole thing, I think we did half of it in a wok, and then the other half of it happened in a cast iron skillet, which works really, really well for searing. So we're going to take a look at how to achieve that wok sear, how to achieve a sear in a wok, and specifically in a round bottom wok like the one we're going to be using today. So we're going to run through all of that. We also used to finish it, like I just mentioned, I used to finish it with a fried egg on top, which was really, really tasty, but also really hard to scale. I have to fry 150 eggs, which is kind of difficult to do. So we're going to do it. I'm going to run through a more typical approach to doing a fried rice, which is going to be with scrambled eggs kind of folded in. And we're going to take a look at how I like to approach that. So lots of stuff like that coming up very soon. So if you haven't yet, as with everything that we cook on stream, as I just mentioned, there's a recipe video that goes along with what we're cooking today. Those always live over on the YouTube channel. So this particular fried rice came out last Friday. So we did this recipe last Friday, and we took a look at all of those details. In that particular recipe video that came out last Friday, I also ran through some of the specifics behind how I change the approach when we do this particular dish in a wok burner, because it looks very different when you cook it on a wok burner because you have a lot more heat going on. So the way that you approach the dish looks pretty different because you don't have to do a lot of the things that we're going to do today, and we'll also talk through some of that today too. So if you have any questions for me, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I'll do my best to answer everyone. I don't know everything about wok frying and fried rice, but I know lots of stuff, so hopefully I can be helpful or informative, or at the very least, fun to watch. Cool. Sharknov, hello, how's it going? Doing good. Yeah, excited to make some fried rice. So as with a lot of the things that we cook on stream, I'm starting things off. This is 4 cloves of crushed. This is actually 5 cloves of crushed and minced garlic. I was about to throw out one of the cloves because it was too small, but it's 5 cloves. So I'm starting off. This is 5 cloves of crushed and minced garlic, or usually this is, amounts to about like a quarter of a head of garlic. We're gonna crush these up real good. It's real useful to crush your garlic. I actually just did a recipe for a garlic noodle where I didn't crush the garlic. And if you've ever tried to peel garlic without crushing it, it is really, really difficult because when you crush that garlic, if you were just watching just now, as soon as you crush the garlic, the skin pops right off because the garlic starts losing its shape. And then the skin just comes right off once you crush it. If you don't crush it, it's a lot harder to get that skin off. And I think in that video that I just finished, that's coming up in a couple of weeks for garlic noodles, I think it took me like a good 10 minutes to crush, or to peel like 5-6 cloves of garlic, something like that. So also a good use, or a good reason to crush your garlic before you mince it. It makes it a lot easier to peel. Next up though, this is about a tablespoon or about 1 inch's worth of ginger, which we're going to finely mince. Starting off by doing a rough dice, like so. Then we're going to line it up like that, and then we're running our knife through it. This is at this point very, very helpful when you do your fine minces like this to have a very sharp knife. If you don't have a sharp knife, first of all, you should always have a sharp knife. Don't ever cut with a dull knife. Cooking with a dull knife is really, really dangerous. I would say maybe the most dangerous thing that you can do is cutting with a dull knife, because what happens is when your knife is really, really dull, what happens is you start having to push down really, really hard and exert a lot of effort in order to get the knife to go through certain things. So first, what happens is if you're cutting with a dull knife and you find yourself pushing down really, really hard to cut through stuff, the first thing that happens is if you're chopping something really, really delicate, like a tomato, for example, or it's like soft tofu, for example, you're just going to crush that stuff because you're not actually chopping anymore. You're just pushing the knife through, which is bad because you're just going to ruin all of the things that you're chopping. But also, more importantly, and also the reason as to why it's dangerous, is if you're pushing your knife really, really hard, that's going to present a lot of opportunity for you to slip. And as soon as you start slipping, you're going to cut your hand off. So don't do that. Sharpen your knives. Lots of people are afraid of sharp knives because they think that a sharp knife makes it easier to cut yourself. Dull knife, much easier to cut yourself on. So that's our garlic and our ginger. You will notice, by the way, that there is not very much prep going on. This is actually I think, of the 4 fried rices that we do in the pop-up, this is the fastest one to make because it has so few things going on in it. So also one of my favorites because it's so simple. So that's our garlic and our ginger. Then next up, these are going to be 3 eggs. So what I usually say is about 1.5 eggs per bowl of rice. For the portion that we're doing today, which is 22.5 ounces of cooked rice. This usually amounts to about 2.5 to 3 servings of rice. What I usually like to say is it would feed 2 very, very hungry people or 3 moderately hungry people. So I'm using 3 eggs, so ideally we're looking for is about 1 to 2 eggs per person. In our original recipe, by the way, the original bacon kimchi fried rice that came out on the YouTube channel, I fried these eggs. We did it in over easy on a skillet. Today we're going to fold it into the fried rice though. Cool, so those are our eggs. Let's see. Next up, this is my bacon. We're going to slice up very thinly. Anytime that you see me using bacon, you will see me using bacon quite a bit. Most often what you'll see me using is thick cut bacon, so you can tell because the bacon is nice and thick on this edge. What I'm really looking for though is not just that it's chopped very, very thick, but is that it has lots of this fat right here. So all of this white portion that we're looking for, all of that stuff. That's the stuff that we're looking for when I'm using thick cut bacon. and I find generally, not always, but generally, is that thick cut bacon tends to have more of this fat portion. So I want all of that fat today because for a couple of reasons, but I strongly believe that bacon fat, that's where all of the flavor. When you eat bacon, not true. I think when you eat bacon and you're tasting the flavor of bacon, it comes from the fat. So we're trying to retain as much of that fat as possible. That's also going to be, in addition to all of that though, it's also the key to getting a really good sear is all of this fat. So I'm slicing this up. We're going for a fairly large dice here. Are garlic noodles the same as butter garlic noodles? So I'm pretty sure that's a good question. I actually just finished doing a whole bunch of research about this because I just finished editing this video today. And the answer is I'm not really sure, and I don't think there's a real answer to that. I think my gut instinct is to say that butter garlic noodles comes from probably just like American cuisine, or just generally like American pantry cuisine, in which we use like butter plus garlic plus probably some kind of pasta like spaghetti or something, and then usually that would probably involve some kind of parmesan, and then we toss that together, which probably looks most similar to a carbonara. I think that's probably what you closest see represent a carbonara. So I guess it would have like relatively close ties to Italian food, whereas like a Chinese garlic noodle, the one that I did for at least, is most closely associated to the one, I forget what it's called in English, but it has a crispy lo mein noodle, so it uses Hong Kong, not lo mein, but it uses Hong Kong thin egg noodles, and that's like if you've ever had like Singapore noodles or Hong Kong noodles, it's the noodles that are wok fried, so they don't actually ever get boiled, and it has this really crispy quality to it. So that's the version that I made. What I was thinking of when I made that dish though was not actually either of those things. What I was thinking of is pasta aglio olio, which is another Italian dish that I think that's like probably the closest thing to represent what garlic noodles is, because it literally is just noodles plus garlic. That's literally all what that dish is, and we're essentially low and slow cooking a bunch of garlic, like an entire head of garlic, in like a lot of olive oil, like an entire cup of olive oil, and then you bloom out the aromatic flavor of that garlic and over a really, really low heat, and that's what a pasta aglio olio is. I'm very bad at pronouncing Italian, by the way. To answer your question, I don't know. I don't think there is an answer to that. I think that garlic noodles is a very abstract thing because it exists in so many different food cultures. So to try and like get one food culture to claim it is kind of silly. But I do think though that butter garlic noodles probably has its closest ties to Italian food, but really just has ties to American food. I think that's where it comes from. Good question though. And also, I'm glad that I got to talk about that because I've been reading about garlic noodles all day. I've been researching garlic noodles all day. All right, so next up, I'm starting off. This is our sauce base today. When we do this in the pop-up, you will often see us using like a mystery reddish brown sauce. It's in a squeeze bottle, and it goes in every fried rice that we do. Usually, a couple of the fried rices will have a couple extra additions to it, but this particular sauce, it goes in every, all 4 of the fried rices that we do. It's not a secret sauce. We like to call it a secret sauce, but it's not a secret sauce. I'm not trying to keep it a mystery because it exists in like 5 different recipes. It's published everywhere already. So that was 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of sesame oil, 1.5. It should be 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce, and then finally this is going to be 1 tablespoon of gochujang. Paul Walker. What's my favorite dish to make? That's a good question. What's my favorite dish to make right now? That kind of like changes a lot. Right now, I don't know. I think I just enjoy cooking in general. I think my favorite things to make lately have been like noodle dishes. So I've been enjoying working with noodles that are not rice noodles. For a while, I was really into making like Thai dishes and working with chow fun. So like things like pad see ew, pad kim mao, pad Thai, and then the Chinese equivalent, so like beef chow fun, stuff like that. I was we were cooking with that stuff a lot, which I still do actually. I cook those dishes a lot. But lately, I've been getting more into like Chinese style noodles and just like experimenting more with egg noodles and kind of like living in that world. What else? Probably like my favorite cuisine to make is usually like breakfast foods in general. With oftentimes that ends up being like dim sum and like stuff like that. I like to work with eggs a lot. I don't know. I just enjoy cooking, so I'll really cook anything. I would say like maybe the thing that I really more broadly, the things that I really enjoy are the stuff that like really challenge me and like really like push me to do better. So there's like a lot of cuisine, especially like a lot of Chinese cuisine where I feel very, very comfortable, and that's usually like when we're doing things where I'll fry a vegetable and then I'll add some couple of things, and I'll add a couple of other proteins, and then we'll toss it together in a wok, and then we'll add a sauce, and then we get some kind of Chinese stir fry. So lots and lots of things that look like that. So like kung pao chicken, mapo tofu, the like Shanghainese meatballs, all those things. That's like the world where I feel like really, really comfortable, is just like living in that world. That just generally that world of Chinese food. So what I would say is like what I've been enjoying most is like experimenting with things that push me outside of that world, and like getting me to like just generally just challenging me to like improve, I guess. So like what did I make recently? Oh, we did a Chinese Shaolin Bao. That was really hard. So the Shaolin Bao, I think that came out over on the YouTube channel a couple of weeks ago, and that might have been like arguably one of the hardest things that I've ever tried to make. Shaolin Bao is for the faint of heart. That's really difficult, really, really difficult bao to make. I also just did a la rou fan, which is like a slow cooked pork belly that comes from Chinese food. It also just like reminds me of home a lot. So that one was really hard. So stuff like that, anything that really challenged me, I think. Question. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I agree. I talk to people who skip breakfast all the time, and I feel like they're monsters. All right, so over on the stove, I'm just gonna pop over here. By the way, we just finished whisking up our sauce before I just topped all the way through it. So we're breaking down, what I just did was whisked up that sauce. I did it with a fork. You could also do it with a whisk. Basically just into a smooth paste. Very important, it's gotta be a smooth paste. Otherwise, you're going to be adding a lot of solids to your rice, so you want to make sure that stuff gets broken down. And then behind me, I've got my bacon that's in a cold wok right now, and then I've got that over medium-low heat, actually like closer to low heat right now. And then we're going to let that very gradually come up to temperature. That's going to give us some nice liquid bacon fat. What's my least favorite food? Oh, man. Least favorite. Oh yeah, you know what? Like I will say confidently is my least favorite thing to do is any kind of baking. If it involves any kind of baking, I really dislike baking. Baking is not my game. The more that I've experimented with baking, I definitely like had a COVID phase where I got into like sourdough bread and stuff. I'm not a baker, and it kind of just makes sense to like think about like the qualities about like what wok cooking is. And the qualities about what baking is. Wok cooking is very much about like improvising, like understanding like how a recipe works, and then working around like what are the constraints of what you're cooking, and then like adapting what you're cooking for the moment, and like in that moment what is happening on the stove and adjusting. So there's like you write recipes, like adjusting that recipe in real time to make it adaptable to like how things are looking in that exact moment. Whereas baking is like it's just about like following everything to an exact T. And if you like space out, or you miss something, or if you like measure something wrong, or if just you breathe on it incorrectly, if it's too warm, if it's too cold, if you like did something, if you freaking look at it wrong, the whole thing is ruined. You just have to start over again. So it has taken me years to realize this, but I don't think that I enjoy baking. That's just me, though. I know lots of people love baking, but yeah. Yeah, good question. Yeah, least favorite. Yeah, I think I'm just really just not a baker. There are actually more than a couple of recipes up on the YouTube channel that are like diving like headfirst into baking too. And every single one of those recipes, they're like the ones where I usually have to do it twice or 3 times. Usually the ones where like sometimes it doesn't look perfect. Oftentimes I'll like let people know is like this is like the 5 ones that looked good out of the 24 that I made, stuff like that. So baking is not my forte. Say that. All right. Best tip for stir-frying noodles. Ooh, yeah. You love stir fries and fried rices, but you're terrified of frying noodles. Yeah. So stir frying noodles, it depends. It really depends on like what kind of noodles you're using. So like generally, if we're talking about like Asian noodles, the most important thing that you always want to remember is that anytime that you're working with an Asian noodle, and I want to say this is almost unanimous, like true across the board for almost all Asian noodles, is that they're a lot more delicate than like any kind of Italian pasta that you used. So the way that we preserve Italian pastas, they're like dried out, which means that when you cook it, you have to cook it in like a big pot of boiling water, usually with a bunch of salt thrown in at a rolling boil, and then we boil it for a long time, like 8-10 minutes. It takes a while. Whereas most Asian noodles, not all of them, but like most Asian noodles, your lo mein, stuff like that, your rice sticks, stuff like that, that will take, I think, no more than 2 minutes. When I cook lo mein, I cook it for 2 minutes, and then after that, we immediately put it in an ice bath because you have to halt it at 2 minutes. So the one mistake that I see most often when people cook Asian noodles, especially Chinese noodles, and it's the same mistake that I made many times before I figured this out, is that you end up overcooking the noodles because Chinese noodles, like Vietnamese noodles, Thai noodles, stuff like that, they're very delicate and will overcook really quickly. So yeah, that's the one thing I would recommend. The same is also true for like things like chow fun, Hong Kong thin noodles, stuff like that. They're all very delicate, so you want to go easy and pay attention when you're cooking that stuff, because it will cook really quickly. And then if you're not paying attention, then it just overcooks, and then you have an overcooked lo mein noodle is the worst. Nobody likes an overcooked noodle. Yeah. Do they eat rice for breakfast? They eat rice in China. They eat rice for breakfast. They eat rice forever, for everything. The rice goes in everything in Chinese food. But yeah, that's what shifan is, or like shifan, I believe, is the Chinese. Shifan is, I believe, is the Mandarin translation. So in Cantonese, it is called kongi, which is the thing that you see. I think I last saw kongi in Kung Fu Panda. I think that was what kongi is. It's also just like, more generally, just a dish that exists in a lot of Asian food, which is essentially rice porridge. And rice porridge, by the way, is literally just rice that's overcooked with too much water. That's how you make kongi or shifan in Chinese. There's also like a Korean kongi. I forget what it's called in Korean. There's also a Japanese version of kongi. All of it is the same because it's a very simple concept. It's just rice that's been overcooked in too much water. So. Yeah, but yeah, definitely. There's rice in Chinese food. There's rice everywhere. All right, so we're letting this bacon go. This is going to take maybe another probably not 5 minutes, maybe another 2-3 minutes. What we're looking for, so you can already see it starting to happen here down at the bottom. We have all of this liquid bacon fat starting to render. Once it starts fully rendering, there should be a big pool of bacon fat. If we've done it correctly, it should yield about 3-4 tablespoons of bacon fat. Sometimes if I don't have the fattiest cut of bacon, there won't quite be enough bacon fat, and then we'll have to supplement it with a little bit of cooking oil too. Yeah, am I Gled from The Walking Dead? That's quite an honor. Stephen Yeun is one of my all-time favorite actors. But no, I'm not. He is a very handsome guy, though. And then also, as the bacon fat starts rendering, our bacon starts cooking in a little bit more liquid. So once it starts rendering fat, it starts cooking a little bit faster, or starts rendering even faster. So sort of like a snowballing effect. If you really want to speed things along, you could also just add some water, but I don't really like doing that. Yeah. You know how to cook chicken, that's good. Yeah, chicken is tough. Chicken is deceptively tough. Yeah. Yeah, cool. So another very good use, so if you are on the fence about what type of wok to buy, people ask me about this wok all the time. My favorite quality about it, other than the fact that it's made out of carbon steel, is that it has this rounded bottom to it. So it's the reason why you'll notice that this wok kind of just rolls around like that, which is a little bit sketchy because sometimes, actually more recently, I rolled the wok off the stove, which is not fun. When you roll the wok off the stove, it's never fun. But what happens because of the wok has this rounded bottom is that anything that's liquid ends up condensing here at the bottom. So as we start like rendering out more bacon fat, all of our bacon fat just sort of ends up here at the center of the wok, which is really, really useful for rendering fat like this. Because as it renders, our bacon just starts cooking more of its own fat. So if we pull it up here at the bottom like so, then we get this nice pool of bacon fat that the bacon just continues to cook in. So very, very useful. If you're on the fence about getting a round bottom or a flat bottom wok, what I will usually tell folks is that if you've got a gas range, I say go with the round bottom. But also, Joyce Chen makes a great flat bottom carbon steel that I love too. So that's your game, especially if you're on induction or gas or electric top. Those are really great. Yeah, there we go. It's coming along nice. Do I have any tattoos? No, but I'd like to get one. Like I feel like I've been thinking about getting a tattoo for long enough that I'm probably going to get one. There's a mural here in Oakland that we commissioned, like the banner for that we used to put up on stage with my band Tracer Pete, and that's I'd like to get a sleeve soon. But very soon. All right, so that's our bacon fat. It's coming along real nicely. We've got all this liquid fat going on. Anytime that we're cooking bacon, we also very carefully want to remember that you have to account for carryover cook, which basically is accounting for the fact that once that bacon comes out of the wok, it's going to keep cooking. Probably not for super long, but generally for a good like minute or two, while the bacon just sort of like continues to cool down. It's going to keep cooking. So when we pull it out, we want to make sure that we pull it out a little bit early. Otherwise, you're going to have overcooked bacon or burnt bacon. So there's my bacon coming out of the wok. It is maybe, we got another 2-3 minutes left to cook on this thing, which is nice because that by the time that we add it back to our wok, that bacon is going to be nice and cooked. All right, so next up, we're pulling our bacon out. I like to clean out the wok when we do batch cooks, but I actually don't think that it matters. And anytime that I can avoid cleaning out the wok, I like to avoid doing it. Because basically every time that you clean out your wok in between a batch cook, what you're cleaning out is a bunch of flavor. So if we were to rinse that wok out right now, what we essentially be rinsing out is bacon fat, which is the whole point of what we're cooking right now. So anytime that I can, I usually try and avoid cleaning out the wok. Very, very often when we're batch cooking, that's kind of unavoidable because we generally don't want to leave too many things behind in the wok because that stuff eventually just starts to burn. So. But in our case today, I think we can actually get away with it because there's not actually that much stuff going on. There's just a little bit of bacon grime and then a lot of bacon fat, which I really want to leave behind if we can. Next up, this is about 4 tablespoons of peanut oil. Peanut oil? I think we're using grapeseed oil today, actually. Maybe a little bit more than 4. I'm adding a little bit more oil than I normally would because that's not quite as much bacon fat as I'd like to have. So. Then going in first, here's my garlic, then that's my ginger. And then I like to say is we're going to bloom this for about 15 seconds, or essentially for as long as it takes to become fragrant. So we're smelling. When you start smelling garlic and ginger, that's when you know you're ready to move on. Then next, here's my kimchi going in. This should be about 1.5 cups of kimchi, is what I usually say. And then if you can manage it, so you won't always be able to do this depending on how old your kimchi is, but if you can harvest any out, what I like to do is add a little bit of kimchi brine going into the wok here. I usually will go for up to 1/4 cup or so if you can manage it. I don't think we're going to be able to get 1/4 cup of kimchi brine out of that today. But if you can get it out, that's a great amount. That's a great way to just get a little bit more fishy umami and just like briny qualities to just sort of pop. How does the camera not have smoke and condensation on it? I genuinely don't know. That's a good question. This one that's over here, so this DSLR that points down at the camera, lots of times when I like plate stuff up on the cutting board when it's really, really hot, it fogs up all the time, and I'm sure people have seen that. I don't know why this one never fogs up. I'm guessing because of the angle that the camera's at. I don't know. I really don't know. Same concept work with large propane woks. Yeah, so yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for bringing that up because I did mention that I would talk about this. So I mentioned this earlier, but this is also a fried rice that we do in our food pop-up. When we cook it in the food pop-up, we have these wok burners. By the way, they're made by Wokman LLC. Those guys are really great. They don't pay me to say this. They just have a really, really awesome wok burner. And they sent me a really cool one, and it's fucking dope. So if you're looking for a wok burner, get a Wokman LLC burner. Those things are fucking dope. So, all that. What's happening when we cook it in a wok burner is that the wok is much, much hotter. So, if we were in a wok burner right now, this would be burnt by now. Because you can't, when you're on a wok burner, there's no point in time where you'll ever be able to leave the wok this still. If you leave a wok this still on high heat, on BTU, like 200,000 BTUs, it would just start burning immediately. So, what we generally have to do in order to adapt for the fact that we don't have all of those really, really high BTUs is a couple of things. The first thing that's very, very important is that you notice that I keep removing stuff from the wok. So we rendered our bacon fat, then we're pulling it out. Next I'm doing my kimchi and my garlic and ginger. Then I'm gonna pull this out, and then we're gonna break up our rice, and then we're gonna add everything back into the wok. So the idea being is that as we cook each of these elements, the wok is still very, very hot. It's just constantly empty. You can't have everything in the wok at any point if you're trying to cook it, because then you're going to be cooking on low heat, which is never a good thing. So the batch cook is very, very important. But also, the other thing that I'm doing all the time is the reason that I'm stopping and letting that wok kind of just sit there, because as I keep tossing the wok, what's happening is that the wok is cooling down. So the toss is very important because we want to just sort of start agitating and shifting things around. But at the same time, every time we toss, the wok starts cooling down a little bit more. So that's the reason that we're letting it kind of sit still for so long, so that the wok can kind of like catch up. But if we were doing this on the wok burners, this would be done cooking already, because it would basically just be throwing everything in, then I would toss it a couple of times, and then usually when we cook this fried rice, we kick it out in I think like 1.5 minutes, because I don't have to constantly pull stuff out like that. Yeah. Ooh. Tech matter. Yeah, those things are cool. So I don't like to throw shade, but in addition to the Wokman LLC burner that we have, we also have 2 stand sport burners. which fucking suck. I hate the stand sport burners so much. And it also ends up being the wok burners that we use a lot. So if you're in the market for a wok burner, I can tell you what's wrong with the stand sport burner is that their burners, they have, so I think like what's most important about wok burners, lots of people think that it's about how hot the wok gets, but it's actually not. That's not the thing that we want to pay attention to. What's actually more important is heat distribution. That's actually a lot more important because of the shape of the woks. This is the way that this thing is shaped. These outer edges here, they start cooling down really quickly, which means that once they start cooling down, you can't put stuff there. If you overfill a wok and you have stuff that's sitting out on this outer edge over here, it's not going to cook. You're going to be cooking on low heat, which is not good. So heat distribution is the more important aspect about a good wok burner, not high heat BTUs. So even if your wok has 200,000 BTUs, it's not really going to be very useful if all of it is shooting up just straight into the center of the wok, which is how our stand sport burners work, which I hate. It's terrible. All right, anyway, enough about that. So the other thing that also changes very dramatically, the other thing that also changes very dramatically from the way that we're cooking when we do this in the food pop-ups is that we're using, so what I'm cooking with right now, this is leftover rice, which you'll notice is very, very clumpy, so I'm running my wok spatula through it to just break up those large clumps. When we do it in the pop-ups, we actually don't use leftover rice because it actually causes just a whole bunch of health code violations about using leftover rice. That's not really food safe, which we don't need to get into. That's really boring. But so the bottom line is that you can't really use leftover rice when you cook for like the general public. So what we usually do, instead of using leftover rice, we use very, very fresh rice, and then I add a couple of tablespoons of cornstarch. So you add two tablespoons of cornstarch, I think 2 to 30 ounces of cooked rice. And then what happens is the cornstarch dries up all of the excess moisture. But because it's still very, very fresh, you'll notice that the rice doesn't clump up quite as much, which is very, very useful. So you get these nice separated grains. And then usually what happens is it ends up looking like what we're looking at right now, is rice that's nice and separated, no large clumps, stuff like that. But either way, you can get to the same result with leftover rice too, like so. All right, that's looking good. Let's see. So, last up, I'm adding everything back to the wok. We're almost done cooking here, so we can go ahead and start combining stuff. There's my kimchi going in, finally, followed by my bacon fat. Bacon and bacon fat. Then I'm just tossing all of this together. At this point, there's nothing super delicate in our wok, so I can still kind of run my spatula through here, and we can go through and break up any remaining rice clumps going on. My language makes your mom angry. Oh, I'm sorry. Tell your mom I said I'm sorry. Alright, so that's looking nice and broken up. Then next, what I'm going to do here is we're moving everything to one side of the wok like so. And our goal here is to expose this wok area here, so we're looking for all of this exposed carbon steel down here. So that we can use it to cook stuff. So what we're about to do is we're going to add our egg to the wok, but when we add that egg to the wok, we want to make pay close attention and make sure that when the egg gets in the wok, is that it's hitting a cooking surface. So you don't want that egg to hit the rice, because if it goes on top of the rice, then it's just going to coat your rice in egg, which is still very tasty, but it's going to look more like a pad thai where the noodles are like covered in egg. and that like the egg is going to stick to the rice. That's not actually what we want here. What we want is our eggs to have nice big egg curds. So we're looking for scrambled eggs right now. So in order to do that though, those eggs, they need to hit a cooking surface, otherwise they're not going to curdle. So I'm adding, that's a little bit more vegetable oil, peanut oil, grapeseed oil I think. Back to our wok. And then I'm adding my eggs here. And then we're going to let it set. So I'm going to do a little bit of omelet action here and just sort of shift things this way. This, by the way, the reason that we didn't add this earlier is so that we could be a little bit more aggressive with our wok tossing. If we had added this earlier, then while we were shifting that wok around and sort of throwing things around and breaking up those rice clumps, what we would have also ended up doing is break up the eggs, and then you would have like really, really fractured eggs. And oftentimes you'll just like lose the egg in the fried rice, which is not good. So I'm going to let that set. Usually that's going to take a minute or so. I'm left-handed. Yes, I am left-handed. I don't know why that fascinates people so much. But yes, I am left-handed. Also, the way that you feel about watching a left-handed person cook is how I feel about watching everybody else cook. So lots of people tell me that it's disorienting watching the left-handed person cook. But that's how I feel about literally watching everybody else cook. So welcome to my life. Yeah. What do I cook for a snack? Ooh. I did a video about this actually. So we did pretty recently, a couple of weeks ago, we did a Pantry Basics episode where I kind of like dove into a lot of really, really fundamental stuff that you need to know about like what kind of ingredients that you want to like have in your pantry. So basically like what are all of the things that are in this cabinet right here, and like what do I do with them? In that recipe, in that video though, I also ran through like a couple of different like really easy pantry snacks. One of which was, I don't remember if I did both of them. One of them though was a soft tofu with soy sauce and furikake, which is that's actually a real dish. It comes from Japanese food, but it's so simple that it's not really a recipe, and it does exist as a form of a recipe video over on the YouTube channel. And it's essentially just soft tofu with soy sauce and furikake on top, and then you like slice it up. So if you have soft tofu on hand, that's a really, really easy one to throw together. All right, last up before we finish this off, I'm adding, that's my sauce base going in here. Now that our eggs are in the wok, I'm being a little bit more careful about how our wok tossing goes. We don't want to be too aggressive at this point because you're going to start breaking up those eggs. But I'm just adding my sauce a little bit at a time. I don't think we're going to use all of it. It doesn't look like we're going to use all of it. And then last up, what we're going to do is we're going to let this sit. I'm going to turn the fire down a little bit so we're at like medium-high heat now. And there should be actually enough fat at this point because we just did so much batch cooking. There should be enough cooking oil going on here. That we're going to let this sear for a good 2 minutes. So at this point, when we do this in the food pot, when we're cooking on wok burners, this step it usually only takes about 45 seconds because when we're searing, because it's at such high heat, you can sear much, much quicker. On our home burners, because there's so many things in the wok right now, this step it usually takes me closer to 2 minutes or so. Yeah, Courtney, though, good question. The pantry snacks, that's one of my favorites. That was actually my favorite part about that video is that we ran through things that were not really recipe videos, but they're just good recipe videos. Or like they just ended up being recipes. So that's a really good one. So tofu with a little bit of furikake. Another one, lots of times what I'll do is just if you have leftover rice but you don't feel like making fried rice, is I usually will keep a little bit of rosong, which is a Chinese like dried pork, like dry aged pork. And it's pantry stable, so I usually just keep that in the pantry. That stuff is really pantry stable. You could put that in a bomb shelter; it would stay stable for literal years. And just add that on top of a little bit of rice, maybe with a little bit of soy sauce, and that's a real good snack too. So rosong, I think in English, translates to like pork floss or like pork string, something like that. Sometimes like the English translations of a lot of the things that we eat in Chinese food are like not very appetizing. Like pork floss does not sound good. It does not sound like something I want to eat, so I find that amusing. Cool, so this is at 1:50. I think this is gonna take longer than 2 minutes. Mainly what I'm looking at here, so I've cooked this so many times that at this point I'm just kind of doing this by feel. But when what we're paying attention to is like, what does this outside exterior layer look right here? So I can see right here, these like slight corners that are touching the wok right here. They're not quite darkened enough yet. So what I'm paying attention to is when that starts looking a little bit more darkened and browned, it's looking pretty good. But also just because I have cooked this, I've probably cooked this dish like close to 2,000 times now. So I'm mostly just doing this by feel at this point. This is also one of the first times in a while that we've done a recipe without a recipe in front of me, or a dish without a recipe in front of me. So this is what we're looking for here. We've got all of this nice dark crispy edges going on. Lots of people would call that burnt. I call that crispy. To each their own. A sear is really just a controlled burn. That's gonna do it. So glad I got unbanned. Yeah, I'm super glad that I got unbanned from gift recipes too. That kind of sucked. I honestly, even the moderators didn't know what happened. I think somebody just like maybe like fat thumbed the ban button. That kind of sucks though. All right. So this, by the way, I've been recommending this a lot to a lot of folks. If you don't like kimchi, this is or if you're like just trying to get more into kimchi, this is a good one to like test out. Because what happens is when you cook kimchi, is that the cooking process on the kimchi, it starts taking off a lot of the edge and that like really briny and like abrasive quality about kimchi. That actually is my favorite part about kimchi. But it takes off a lot of that edge though once it gets cooked. So this is a really good one to try out. And by the way, RKK6, you mentioned how the camera never fogs up. This camera fogs up a lot as soon as we add stuff to the bowl. This lens fogs up a lot. So I think it has something to do with the angle of the camera. So if you've got your wok seasoned properly, that should just come right out of the wok, by the way. Especially with sears like that. You should not have to do too much scraping. Right. Now that I've got that, looks delicious. Thank you. Yeah. This is one of my favorite fried rices. I think it's like somewhere in between the combination of like how easy it is to throw together, how delicious it is, and like also just like uses my favorite kimchi. It uses kimchi, which is one of my favorite foods. So in the original recipe that we had published over on the YouTube channel, there weren't these scrambled eggs going on. I had held back those eggs, and then instead of adding the eggs to the fried rice, we added them as a fried egg on top, which is it's a very Korean street food thing to do, is add a fried egg. Literally, if you're not sure what else to do to make something more Korean, just add a fried egg on top. It's basically going to be the key to Korean street food. Add a fried egg on top. Ooh, do I have recommendations for a good kimchi brand? I know a lot of kimchi brands. I'm not in love with any of the ones that I'm eating right now. Let's see. There is a really good house-made brand if you're here in the Bay Area that Koreana makes in-house. They make that stuff in-house. It's dirt cheap. You could get a gallon of it for $18, which is crazy. This right here, this is not that. This is lacto-fermented kimchi that you get in Chinatown. This was $7. I think this is like, yeah, this is 28 ounces, which is way less than a gallon of kimchi. And that the one that you can get at Koreana is much cheaper, and it's also like much better. So I don't really have like a particular like favorite brand of kimchi. Usually what I look for when I'm looking at kimchi is the main thing I'm looking for is what does the brine look like. So what I like to do is flip it over and kind of take a look at like how much brine actually like starts accumulating when you look at the cap. That usually to me is a sign that it has been aged decently well. It also is like a sign that there's lots of like juice that is like the liquid is coming out of the cabbage. So once the liquid starts coming out of the cabbage, that means that it's fermented and it's going to have like more of a pungent quality to it, just sort of like from aging, I guess. But really, it's honestly, I don't think I've found a kimchi brand that I love right now. I know a lot of kimchi brands that I don't love. So. So that's just a little bit of green onions that I had lying around. I think that was from the last pop-up we did. And I actually streamed it. I think I was streaming when I cut up these green onions. And we had like a really bad camera, or really bad audio. Nobody could hear what I was saying. Cool. All right. Yeah. Cool. So that's it, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I'm going to keep sticking around and doing some dishes here because we just used a whole bunch of bowls. So there's a lot of dishes to do. So I'll be here doing dishes, and I'll try and circle back and make sure I answer. If you have any other questions, feel free and drop them in the chat. What else? If you're watching on Reddit, there's also a YouTube stream going on behind me. The stream behind me, a whole list of everything that we're going to be streaming for the next, I think, like 3 or 4. I think it goes out 4 weeks now. So if you want to find out what we're going to be cooking next, that's a good place to check out. That's also where all of our recipe videos are out. Those come out every Friday. So last Friday was the recipe for this kimchi fried rice, which we ran through because it's one of the dishes that comes up in our food pop-up, which is really fun and looks a little bit different when you cook it on a wok burner. So all of that stuff, if you haven't checked it out yet, lives over on the YouTube channel. We're working our way up to 5,500 subscribers by the end of the month. I think we're getting pretty close too. So if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please hop over, give it a subscribe. Lots of fun stuff coming up. Because you couldn't see that well, yeah. You couldn't see that well. I feel that would make more sense if you said it out loud. Cool. Yeah, so all that stuff, it lives over on the YouTube channel. If you're watching on Reddit, that's the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, that's the channel you're already on. Good job. You did it. What's coming up? This Friday coming up is a recipe for, we're doing Singapore black pepper chicken, which is another P.F. Chang's hack, which lots of people. That comes from the P.F. Chang's menu, and kind of like taking a look at, so the Singapore black pepper chicken, actually the way that the P.F. Chang's recipe works is actually, the more that I had dug into it, the more that I discovered there's actually quite a bit of authentic approach to the way that they cook that thing. With just like a lot of like really Americanized quality. So the first thing that kind of stands out to me is that black pepper is not a thing in Chinese food. I don't think I've ever used black pepper in Chinese food. So that was the first thing that stood out to me. But actually the Singapore black pepper chicken, when you order from P.F. Chang's, the way that they do it is that
using an approach that to me is really like really nostalgic, and is like something that I have only ever seen in Chinese food. Is they steam the chicken, so they take the chicken thigh and instead of wok frying it, they cook it in a steam basket. And that usually when you do that, you would steam it with some kind of aromatic. The way that I've always seen it done is with ginger. So you steam it and get like a steamed ginger chicken, and then the chicken becomes very, very tender and like lacy. So that was, I thought, really, really interesting. And we actually took a shot at the recipe. That was really interesting too, because they actually published that recipe, which looks very different. And that was a really fun one. So that's coming up this Friday. What else? Friday after that, we're doing miso glazed salmon tacos. That's going to be really fun. So. And then last up, if you're here in the Bay Area, we have a pop-up coming up that I'm really stoked for. We're doing a pop-up at Degrees Play-Doh in East Oakland. We're popping up in a physical location for the first time ever. This is the first time that we've actually popped up at a venue. Usually we pop up at events and stuff. We pop up at farmers markets and a couple of other fairs and stuff. So we're finally getting into like a physical location, and then hopefully people will start having us at physical locations more. So if you're free this Halloween, that's coming this coming Sunday, come and show us your costume and come say hi. We're rolling out a couple of different menu items too, which I'm really excited and sort of nervous for. So we're coming out with Laro Fan, which I just posted a picture of over on the Instagram, which is like a Taiwanese pork belly, like a slow-cooked Taiwanese pork belly. Then we're also rolling out Jiaoli Jiao, which is a curry puff, which we actually did. That actually comes from the recipe, the Wu Can Cook recipe series. And then we're also going to start doing green onion pancakes, or tongyou bing, all of which is going to be there this Sunday. And then it might not actually come back if it's not something that we can again. So that might be your only chance to try those things. Cool. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll be back this coming Thursday. We're going to be cooking something. I don't remember what we're cooking this Sunday, or this Thursday. We are cooking this Thursday we're doing a pad gras prao, which is a Thai street food dish using ground chicken. So lots of fun stuff coming up. I'll see you soon. Bye.
If you think that you don't know, never mind that you still don't love yourself. No, you can find it from somebody else. No, everybody's got to grow up sometime. Funny how we shoot the mood. Still, will we fight it, baby? Never mind. Everybody wants to be they still got streets, but they don't love me like they used to love it. And I'm reminded of how bad I used to want it. And yes, I still got streets, but more like a toolkit of my 20s, and it's breaking me down. Want to be, baby, yes,
You're as sweet as strawberry wine. Your bed warm, a glass of brandy, darling, I'll stay stoned on your love all the time.
Am I coming out of left field?